Have you ever worked your entire life to prove something to people who never cared about you until it benefited them? I have. My parents ignored me for years, dismissed my dreams, belittled my choices, and yet, when they saw what I had achieved on my own, suddenly I existed again. I guess appearances matter more than respect. That day, the day they finally noticed, I realized just how deep their selfishness went, and how sweet my revenge could be. It all started months before the wedding. I had been planning everything with Jake, my fiancé, and honestly, I was nervous but excited. I thought my parents would be happy. They were supposed to be proud, to celebrate. But instead, the text began. "We are busy that day," my mom wrote. "Do not expect us to come," my father added, almost as if it was a challenge, not a polite decline. I blinked at the screen, unsure if I should be hurt or angry. I chose both. I cried that night, sitting on my bed, my phone in my hand, staring at the words that felt like knives. Jake held me, whispered that we did not need their approval to have the life we wanted. He was right, but the sting lingered. I poured myself into planning the wedding without them. I hired the florist, the caterer, the band, even the photographer, and I did it all with care and love, imagining the day as if they were not missing. And when the day came, it was beautiful. Sunlight streamed through the chapel windows, laughter echoed off the walls, and everyone I loved was there, except my parents. My father's empty chair, my mother's absence, was a void that could not be ignored. I smiled, I laughed, I danced, but a small, bitter part of me burned. They had made a choice, and now they were missing history in the making. The reception was perfect. Jake and I were surrounded by friends, by family who cared, by colleagues who had supported us, and yet, I could not shake the feeling that something was missing, something that could not be replaced. My mother's calls did not come. My father did not apologize. The emails remained curt, passive-aggressive, filled with implications that we owed them gratitude. I had always known they were selfish, but witnessing it in real time, during the happiest day of my life, was shocking. That was the moment I realized. If I wanted closure, if I wanted real satisfaction, I had to do it myself. I had been working toward independence for years, quietly saving, investing, and building a career that my parents had dismissed as unimportant. They had always believed that their financial leverage gave them control. They had funded vacations, bought gifts, and always reminded me of their help as if it were a favor. I let them think they still had that power, but I was ready. I had a plan. Slowly, meticulously, I began to redirect every dollar they assumed they controlled. Every bill they thought they were paying, every account they thought was under their supervision. I transferred, I secured, I protected. I was building a life so completely mine that no intervention from them could matter. Months after the wedding, I made my move. I bought a Porsche. A sleek, black, aggressive machine that reflected every late night, every sacrifice, every ounce of independence I had clawed for. $135,000, no financing, no compromises. Just the result of years of working, saving, and being underestimated. I knew it would get their attention, and it did. I drove it through town the day it was delivered. Deliberately slow, deliberate, the engine's roar a whisper of triumph. And as I parked it outside the restaurant for brunch with friends, I saw them, my parents, my father's jaw dropping, my mother's hand flying to her mouth. Suddenly, the child they had ignored was visible again. Suddenly, I existed. They tried to approach me, flustered, pretending casual curiosity, but the tone was transparent. "Wow, I did not know you were driving that now," my mother said, her voice tight, like she was swallowing nails. My father cleared his throat, looked me up and down, and asked, Is that really yours?" I smiled, calm, almost gentle, and replied, "Yes, it is. Months of hard work, Dad." I could see the wheels turning behind their eyes. They had underestimated me, always. And now, their surprise and disbelief were priceless. It was not just about the car. It was about everything the car represented. Independence, success, self-respect, a life built without their interference. I could see their minds racing, trying to reconcile years of neglect with the fact that I had built something substantial, undeniable, and beautiful. I let them stew in it, let them realize that their past cruelty had no power over me anymore. And I watched the subtle shift in their demeanor, the way they suddenly wanted to engage, to comment, to be noticed, when for years they had been absent. After that day, their calls and messages increased, but I had changed. I no longer responded out of obligation, guilt, or fear. I responded strategically, selectively, maintaining boundaries while letting them believe they still had some influence. But I had the upper hand, quietly, completely. Every interaction reminded me of the control they thought they still possessed. But it was mine now. The silence, the attention, the envy, it all worked as part of the plan. Jake was incredible through all of this. He laughed with me, he advised me. He reminded me that the real revenge was the life we built together. And he was right. The Porsche, the career, the savings, the calm confidence. I was not seeking to punish them for cruelty. I was proving to myself that I could thrive, that I could win without needing their validation, without stooping to their level. And that truth, more than any confrontation, more than any snide remark, was the most powerful message of all. Over the next few months, I took even bolder steps. Investments, property, vacations, experiences. All things my parents had tried to control or belittle. I shared glimpses online, subtle, tasteful, showing a life full of beauty, success, and joy. Friends reached out, admiring the accomplishments, celebrating the milestones. And all the while my parents watched, marginally present in my world but powerless. Every post, every achievement, was a reminder that the child they ignored had become a woman they could not control. Then came the subtle social maneuvering. Family, friends, distant relatives, people who had been told my parents' version of events, those stories that painted me as spoiled. Ungrateful or incapable, I began to correct, quietly, with facts, evidence, and patience. Slowly, reputations shifted, narratives changed, and the fortress of influence my parents had built over me and others began to crumble. And I did it without malice, without confrontation, simply by living authentically and proving truth through actions. And so the revenge that tasted sweetest was not shouting, not humiliation, not anger. It was quiet, relentless, and personal. It was in the car I drove, the life I led, the choices I made, and the boundaries I enforced. It was in the peace I maintained, the love I cultivated, and the respect I finally commanded, not from them, but for myself. That day, watching them recognize me through the lens of my success, smiling without words, feeling the shift of power quietly, I knew it was complete. And the best part? This was only the beginning. The life Jake and I were building, free from manipulation, full of respect, autonomy, and love, would continue. Each day a reminder that revenge is sweetest when it is subtle, complete, and leaves the past powerless to hurt you ever again. I had shown them that ignoring me, dismissing me, and trying to control me had no effect. I existed, thriving, and they had no choice but to watch. After that day with the Porsche, I realized that my parents' attention was something I could manipulate, and it became a game, but in a way that empowered me, not them. I began attending social events they had never cared to invite me to. I wore my confidence like armor, always polished, always composed, letting the subtle glances and whispers work in my favor. People noticed me, admired me, and my parents noticed that everyone else noticed. It was intoxicating, but I kept my focus. My life was no longer about proving anything to them. It was about building, celebrating, and controlling my own narrative. One afternoon, a cousin called me, asking about a family reunion they were planning. I paused before answering, remembering how they had once dismissed my opinions, my time, my presence. With a calm smile, I told her I would not be attending. My parents would be there, I knew. And this was the first time I let my absence speak louder than any words. I could hear the hesitation in her voice, the awkwardness of explaining to my parents why I would not come, why I had chosen my life over their approval. That day I felt an immense weight lift off my shoulders. I was finally free from their expectations, free to craft the life I deserved, free to watch them scramble to comprehend the new reality. Then came the next phase, subtle yet striking. I started sharing milestones in a way that my parents could see but could not influence. A promotion here, a vacation there, a charitable act broadcasted just enough to elicit admiration and guilt. I would hear about it later, comments from distant relatives who suddenly looked at me differently, and I would smile privately, knowing that the power dynamic had shifted completely. I had built a life that was undeniably mine, a life my parents had underestimated and could not touch. Jake and I moved into a new home, one we had saved for and designed from scratch. I invited friends over, colleagues who had supported me, people who celebrated my successes, and somewhere in the background I could feel my parents' curiosity. They would drive by, Or a neighbor would mention seeing them lurking, peeking over fences, wondering what this child they ignored had become. It was delicious. This realization that their attempts to control me had left them powerless. The house, my sanctuary, was a fortress of my independence. I also began mentoring others, young women who had been stifled by controlling parents, by toxic families, by doubt. I shared my story carefully, not to boast, but to show them that freedom was possible, that life could be built from your own determination and intelligence. And through them, I realized that my revenge was not just about my parents. It was about reclaiming my voice, my confidence, and helping others do the same. Every young woman who thanked me, every story I influenced, was a reminder that the past could not define the future. Then one day, months later, my mother showed up at the new house. She did not knock, she did not call. She simply arrived as if assuming entitlement. I opened the door, saw her standing there slightly awkward, trying to mask curiosity with authority. I let her in. I did not smile. I did not scowl. I simply walked through the house, showing her each room, each detail, each choice made entirely by me. Her eyes flickered over the furniture, the art, the layout, and I could see the recognition dawn slowly. She had underestimated me, dismissed me, and now she was forced to see the tangible proof of my independence. My competence, my life lived without her input. She tried to start a conversation, but I steered it carefully. Every compliment she offered was met with a quiet, "Thank you, I did that myself." Every suggestion she made was politely, firmly declined. I was no longer the child to be molded, no longer the daughter to be controlled. I had mastered the art of subtle dominance, and as she left that day, I could feel the shift in our dynamic, permanent and undeniable. She had glimpsed the woman I had become, the life I had created, and she could do nothing about it. Meanwhile, my father tried a different tactic. He sent emails, polite at first, then increasingly desperate, as if trying to remind me that he still cared. I let them sit in my inbox for days, unread, unopened, the ultimate test of their patience and control. When I finally responded, it was calm, measured, and just enough to acknowledge them without granting them influence. "I appreciate your concern, but my life is my own. I hope you understand." Every word was deliberate, every pause intentional, and I could see, even from a distance, that this was more infuriating to him than confrontation ever could have been. Then came the social events, the gatherings, the parties where my parents tried to insert themselves. They approached cautiously, hoping perhaps that public display might leverage some old dynamic, some obedience, some respect. But I had already established my identity in the eyes of my friends, colleagues, and extended family. Any attempt to manipulate me in front of others was met with calm assertiveness, subtle boundary setting, and a quiet confidence that left them exposed, vulnerable, and irrelevant. I had not only reclaimed my independence, I had secured it in public, making every past insult and slight meaningless. And yet, the ultimate satisfaction came unexpectedly. One evening, I received a text from my mother, hesitant, almost trembling. "Can we talk?" it read. I smiled, knowing exactly what she wanted. But I did not rush. I did not respond immediately. I let her sit with the uncertainty, the reminder that her previous neglect had consequences. When I finally replied, it was simple, clear, and firm. "We can talk, but on my terms." Every word reinforced the shift. She could no longer dictate my life, my choices, my actions. I had built a life where respect had to be earned, not assumed. Jake and I celebrated quietly that night, toasting to freedom, to boundaries, to success. It was not about punishment. It was about proof that a life built on determination, intelligence, and patience could overcome years of neglect, disregard, and control. And as we clinked glasses, I realized that the true revenge was not visible in anger or confrontation. It was in the life I led, the love I nurtured, and the respect I commanded. That realization was far more satisfying than any public humiliation, any dramatic confrontation, any temporary victory. From that moment forward, I continued to live unapologetically. My parents' occasional attempts at influence became laughable, their judgment irrelevant, their attention selective and powerless. I had built a life that was entirely mine, a narrative authored by my choices, my work, and my perseverance. Every milestone, every achievement, every smile I shared was a declaration of autonomy, a testament to resilience, and a quiet triumph over the years of neglect and dismissal. The most powerful moment came quietly, years later. We hosted a gathering, celebrating a major promotion and some personal milestones. My parents were invited naturally, But this time it was different. They attended, but I saw the hesitation, the recognition, the unspoken acknowledgement that the child they ignored had become a force, entirely independent of their influence. And I realized finally that revenge had taken many forms. Through the Porsche, the home, the career, the friends, the experiences, but the sweetest form was internal. Peace, confidence, and the undeniable knowledge that my life belonged to me, entirely without compromise. And so I live now with a calm satisfaction. The past, with all its neglect, cruelty, and disregard, is powerless to affect my present. My parents' recognition, delayed and grudging, is irrelevant compared to the life I have built, the love I share with Jake, and the boundaries I maintain with unwavering clarity. Every decision, every success, every quiet smile at their astonishment is a testament to my independence. I have learned that the ultimate revenge is not chaos or drama. It is mastery, patience, and the creation of a life so rich, so full, and so undeniably yours that no one else's neglect, judgment, or control can touch it. And as I drive through town, the Porsche gleaming under the sunlight, friends waving, neighbors admiring, I smile quietly to myself, knowing that the child they dismissed now drives the narrative, now controls the world they could never influence. That is power. That is triumph. That is revenge.